Ready. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Academy of Astrology Monthly Transit podcast. Well, today, again, we do a little bit of pre-recording because we're quite busy at this moment. If you follow a lot of astrological what am I saying? Community, astrological community news, you probably know what we are all doing at this moment. But let me welcome Mandi and Marcus. Hello, how are you?
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
What a month, and especially when we prepare this recording, we just realized that all our connection was a little bit interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mandy, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was a little bit. I was very organized as a true Capricorn this morning, and the minute I got online, everything all just went kablooey. I had
Sideways.
to move
Yeah.
to a different room and then move things around. No, I'm not doing my laundry. You know what I mean? I know.
Well, and then
Clean
we were
laundry, by the way, I should say. I'm at home. I don't do clean laundry.
then we were wondering why, and obviously Rod mentioned Mercury, so we had a look, and it turns out that as we're recording this, Mercury is exactly square Neptune and is applying to square Saturn. So it's just like,
Hmm.
okay.
So everyone, bear in mind if our, the connection getting slowed down, don't blame us. Mercury
Blame
again,
the
even
stars.
yeah, even not retrograde, we still can find any reason to blame Mercury for the communication problem. All right, this is the privilege of an astrologer.
Oh,
So
Mercury.
today. So first we are going to talk about this full moon. Sounds quite, I don't know. Even we didn't talk about it because last month we are like a full. We have a lot of things to talk about. But this full moon on the 31st of May sounds pretty. What should I say? Intense,
Mm,
isn't it?
mm.
Mm.
Mandy, you want to share some idea with us?
Yeah, sure. So the sun in Gemini and then the moon in Sagittarius. And go on,
Oh, could
Marcus.
we have a look at the chart? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
okay?
going to do it. Yeah.
Thanks, Rod. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sagittarius full moon with the sun in Gemini. And of course the sun is currently with Gemini obviously is the ruler of oh, I'm getting all confused. Do you know what? This Mercury Neptune confusion leading to frustration and not quite
Yeah.
getting my words out properly. So do excuse me. Uh, but there's a connection obviously because we've got Uranus in Gemini as well. We've got the Sun in Gemini. We did have Mercury in Gemini, obviously, during this full moon as well. So we've got very strong, and SEDNA, of course, is conjunct Uranus as well. If you want to know a little bit more about SEDNA and Uranus, if you don't know much about SEDNA, there's a couple of places that you can go. The first is that Lianne McCafferty, our friend and colleague, and myself did a sort of almost a 90-minute video. We really got into SEDNA. We really got into SEDNA and Uranus and the myth and the themes and the patriarchal sort of themes that come through very strong in the in that astrology. So you can find that video on Lianne's YouTube, which is simply Lianne McCafferty. And you can also see a link to it or watch it on my website on purposeastrology.com. And if you don't have time or you just want a little taster to see how you feel about Sedna and this current energy, then you can go on the Astrological Association Instagram, where yesterday Lianne did an incredible, it's only about 20 minutes, but she gave an incredible talk about Sedna and Uranus live on Instagram for the Astrological Association, and you can see the recording on that as well. So I'll kind of leave you to, because I could talk for an hour and a half on this, but I'll leave it with you to go and do your own research, watch the videos if you want to, and learn about it yourself. But it's really quite important. It's really quite an important, and also we've got Ceres as well, not shown here, but Ceres is conjunct Sedna and Uranus as well. at the moment. And I think what's quite interesting is that because it's about the goddess feminine and the divine feminine energy. It's about that consciousness, that new consciousness of the divine feminine energy. And when I talk about divine feminine energy, we're not just talking about biological male, biological female, something that we have. And with Ceres there as well. Ceres, for those of you who vibe with the idea of higher octaves, Ceres is the higher octave of the moon. And so you've got that mother, that goddess, that mother goddess feel there. And obviously the series misses about Demeter, whose daughter was stolen to the underworld. And there's a connection obviously from SEDNA and Uranus to Pluto at the moment. And you can see that there on this chart. You can see that trine there. And then some astrologers, and I haven't done enough thought, put enough thought or research into it, but some astrologers do feel that Sedna is the higher octave of Ceres. So you've got that. So that's an interesting thing to sort of think about. But I won't say any more, because watch the work that Lianne's done, the work that Lianne and I have done, and you'll hopefully have some more insight.
I will put both link, like your On Purpose website link and the Lianne's YouTube link in the description, so people can just click it. All right. Cool. Yeah. Marcus, what's your view of this full moon?
It's an interesting one. I think it's a couple of reasons why I think this is fairly interesting. The first is that it's squaring the previous eclipse point, I think. So, obviously this full moon is at what we call the bending of the nodes approximately, because the nodes right now are at sort of 3 Virgo Pisces. This full moon's at 9 Sag Gemini. But I think it's so that really refers to the previous eclipse, and this might be a trigger point for some of the events indicated by that eclipse. So that's interesting in and of itself. In terms of the full moon, we talked about this before. Full moons are always things emerging into full view, or it's sort of things becoming fully apparent. And I think this is a relatively positive full moon on the whole. Firstly, because the moon is ruled by Jupiter in Cancer, and in traditional astrology, we would say the Jupiter in Cancer has a generosity with the moon in Sagittarius, because the moon is ruled by Jupiter in Sagittarius, and in Cancer, Jupiter is ruled by the moon. So they vibe with each other. So that's immediately quite positive. And secondly, the sun, the other end of the full moon, of course, is ruled by Mercury in its own sign in Gemini. So I just think in general, and the other thing, although this isn't really so much a positive as an absence of a negative, we've got Saturn trining either end of this Sun-Moon opposition. Now, Saturn trining, if Saturn is really strong, that might add elements of stability. Saturn in Aries, not so much, but it'll kind of it facilitates controlled demolition. Let's put it that way. So it's in terms of the full moon here, I think it would be a good time, because it's a Sagittarius Gemini full moon, for sort of getting out there, for meeting people, for communicating, and for helping to remove obstacles or tear things down that need to be removed. And I think that's maybe seconded, and perhaps you guys could speak a bit more to this, by the fact that Pluto is also in a trine and sextile to this full moon, and that would be a modern planet which might say a similar thing, So it's quite an interesting one, I think, from all those points of view. And there's one final point I was just quickly looking up. Mercury, the ruler of the sun here, is, I think, on a fixed star called Betelgeuse, which is mildly interesting. I mean, I don't know, Rod, you might want to check this, because it's sort of 28 degrees Gemini, I think, is the position of Betelgeuse, which is a fixed star of the nature of Mars and Mercury, or at least different traditional authors say fixed stars are of the nature of different planets. but the consistent planet that's of the nature of is Mercury. And according to Robson in his book on the fixed stars, it says Mercury on Betelgeuse is serious, studious, scientific, and literary, unfavorable for gain, gives fame through writings and engravings in metal, and is favorable for health but liable to accidents. I mean, obviously that's in a birth chart. I think what this is saying is that this might be a good full moon for students, basically, if people are getting stuck into their studies or doing that. So I think that, and obviously this full moon has passed at the time of recording, but it influences the whole second half of the month. So I think it's a positive social moon. It's a positive moon for sort of deconstructing or taking apart things that need to be deconstructed, and it's probably good for social interactions and study. I think that's probably as far as
Thank
I'd
you.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. Mandi?
Yeah, of course. It's interesting what you said about study and students, because you can see 28 degrees of Gemini here, that Mercury. As we talk about the things that are happening now, shortly, we'll see that Mercury's gone into Cancer. That's great for going over past notes and revision and things like that. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes astrology can feel that literal, of course, but going
Yeah.
back to this full moon here, and I think the fact that it is it's pretty, you know, fairly tight, but certainly has a strong influence of to the nodes. That north node here in Pisces asks us for, it's an emotional north node. It asks us for compassion and it asks us for empathy. And then the south node here, which is in Virgo, is things we need to let go of. And what I'm seeing in the news and more generally in social discourse and in the news and in public discourse is a real crisis in critical thinking, and people acting emotionally without potentially really looking into the facts or looking at the other side of things. And that takes us back into all this Gemini energy that's there at the moment. And as I say, when Mercury goes into Cancer, that is sort of emotional thinking. It's critical thinking, which is skewed by emotional reactions, confirmation bias, and that kind of thing. So I think that's what that seems to be just very obvious at the moment in things that are happening in the news. And as Marcus said as well, Pluto supports the whole full moon thing about everything seems to be open out in the open. And Pluto brings things out in the open. It hides things, but it also brings things out in the open that we don't necessarily want to see. So we've been looking at things in the news or in our lives we don't want to see. We can think about Pluto as showing us those things that we don't want to see or don't want to deal with, so that we can see them, so that they are not working behind the scenes in really pretty damaging ways. We can see it, we can do something about it. And as I said, I do think part of the outer planets are obviously about consciousness, and I think one of the evolutions of consciousness at the moment is the new consciousness of really learning about critical thinking and thinking about two sides. There's two sides to every story, just like there's two sides to Gemini. And there's we often forget with Gemini that they are the twins. Well, we don't forget that they're twins, but we often forget that one of the twins was an earthly twin and the other one a mortal twin, and the other twin was an immortal twin, almost like a godlike twin. So there's that eternal, spiritual, universal truth, and then there's the truth of our experience here on Earth, and how do we marry those two things? And that's quite difficult to do. But with critical thinking, with looking to ourselves for our own wisdom, for our own meaning, for being open to look at the other side of things, being open to read beyond the headlines and to think about the motivations behind the headlines, I think is where we need to go as a community, before as a world and as communities. So I will
Wow.
leave it there.
Beautiful. So beautiful. Marcus, you want to add anything?
Yeah, that's really got me thinking, Mandy. That's fascinating. I love that perspective on it, because there's two things that made me think of just what's in my viewfinder at the moment. One is, and we'll touch on this very briefly, is a controversy in the astrological community, which you both will be very aware of, which is a particular astrologer attempting to trademark the word astrocartography. I mean, to anyone who's not an astrologer, this would be like whatever. To astrologers, this is big news because it's somebody trying to make something that is the property of the entire community, their personal intellectual property, which I find personally freaking outrageous. But that is of the nature of this. What you were saying, Mandi, really, that the fact that we've got the Sun and Mercury and Gemini, and that Sun allied with Uranus, and as you've spoken to SEDNA, which is not a body that I use, but I think has some interesting symbolism here, trining that Pluto and sextiling that Saturn in its stability and its fall, I think speaks to that. And the moon in Sag, the full moon in Sag, is sort of like revealing public opinion about intellectual matters, about philosophy and all of that. So bang on, Mandi. I love that. That's in the community. And then, as you say, outside the community, just I totally agree, that critical thinking thing. Like I saw a video the other day about it was this morning actually, it was just stupid, some little short on Facebook with and it purported to show a blue whale feeding its baby like with milk, but the commentator, and it had a human commentator, it was like, this is AI slop and this is all over the internet. It said the facts were correct, the written facts, but the image was complete AI BS. And he said, if you Google this, first of all, it showed humpback whales, not blue whales. Secondly, it was completely erroneous. It said it showed this whale like squirting milk out of a hole in its body into the open mouth of a baby whale. It's like that'd be mixed with salt water, which would kill the baby whale and blah, blah. So it was all just wrong. But the larger point was, said if you now Google blue whale feeding baby, you'll get thousands of these AI generated images that look entirely real that are lies. And I think, again, that speaks to the sort of Sun Uranus trining the Pluto with the Saturn, because the precise symbolism and Mercury and Gemini, like you say, that the Gemini end of it is technology. And with Uranus, it's sort of innovative technology. With the trine to Pluto in Aquarius, it's exposing the sort of rotten underpinnings of that and the effect of that on the collective. And I would say in traditional astrology, Saturn in Aries says a similar thing, because Saturn in Aries is about structures that are ripe for demolition, things that are not quite right. And the fact that both of those planets are trining and sextiling either end of this full moon, it's like these things are coming to light right now. And so I think that was a brilliant analysis, Mandi. So I just wanted to, that was the two things that just popped into my mind as you were talking that I think illustrate what you said perfectly. So yeah.
Well, the full moon, just that full moon really, really triggers the broader and the wider things that are happening with the outer
Yeah,
planet.
and the discussion of it as well, right?
Discussion of it as well, yeah. And I think Sagittarius can help us to see perspective. I think that's another value of Sagittarius. It can help us to see the perspective. We can get totally carried away and totally dogmatic with Sagittarius. So there's always that kind of, back and forth in, and I think dialogue is important, even though I listen to too much talk radio and it gets pretty overwhelming when you do hear like all these different opinions, and it's hard not to react emotionally to those opinions yourself. And I don't, that person's talking a load of rubbish, but that person, I agree with them. And this is what we are. And just another thing, it's rather a little bit of an aside, but it does relate to SEDNA and Uranus and Gemini, is there's been some recently published research into whales. I can't remember what species of whale, which species of whale it is, that they have actually started to understand that they have a language of what we would equate to vowels.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing this.
From the Guardian newspaper. So this whole idea about consciousness that we've got with this whole idea about a new awakening of new consciousnesses is also about the animals. Sedna, of course, is the goddess of the oceans and the ocean mammals. So she's bringing us the ability to potentially one day have conversations with whales and what they need.
Oh, it's so good, Mandy. That's so good. And
Fantastic.
like even, but from a trad astro point of view as well, Jupiter in Cancer, very large animals in the ocean.
Yes.
Having a reception with the moon, they rule that the moon Jupiter rules this whole chart. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, along with Mercury and Gemini. So love it. That's
Thank
beautiful.
you. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, I finally want to add, before we jump to the next topic, I want to add that a little bit, two things. The first thing is astrological. That means the fixed stars. So the sun at 9°55 is indeed very close to Aldebaran, because Aldebaran is 10°05. And then the moon at the 9°55 is very close to Antares. Yeah, it's Nala is 10°05 Sagittarius. They're really opposite each other, really. So it's so interesting. And these full moon is being unleashed two important anchor royal fixed stars. So I like to share one thing is the moon with the Antares is passionate. It's passionate thing. It's Mars enemy. So it's like full of that rage or obsession or want to do something great. And I remember that is kind of something that you really crazy and fix your mind, but you kind of, lost sight of anything else. However, in the Old Barnum, it's kind of a very spring energy, grow up and business mind. But I like what Benedict Brady bring into these big stars. Say, this big star has one thing to do, has to challenge to be success is integrity. Integrity. You have to be honest and be sincere to everyone. If you are going to be, play a game or something, the things can, So add this with what we are experiencing right now. I don't want to add any comment because we don't know the whole things yet. But the story about the astrocartography, which I'm kind of involved for the petition Monday also. We all get involved with this. And what I think is I can see in maybe one side of the story, this person is passionate about astrocartography and they have a big dream. But in another way, with the old Barnum thing with business mind too. This is quite interesting. But I don't want before every whole thing comes clearly out. I don't want to add any comment because like what Mandi just remind us, there's many different side and angle to see before we see the truth, before we see everything. Probably I will hold this judgment but I would like to invite everyone to join the petition because it is quite nice to spread this message out and that to protect our community. And that's final things before I jump into the Mercury in Cancer. But Mandi and Marcus, do you have anything want to add it on this?
I mean, just absolutely love that, Rod. And yeah, please check out the petition, everybody. I didn't know there was one, so I'm gonna have to find it now. So could we maybe pop a link under the video on YouTube, Rod? That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Astrologicalassociation.com, and I think we might have I checked this morning, it was nearly 9,000 signatures.
Oh, fabulous. All right. Yeah. That's great. That's really, I mean, just the Aldebaran Antares thing. I always think of like Aldebaran's beginning, Antares' endings, and the fact that they're royal stars is fascinating. So these could be significant beginnings and endings with this full moon. And what you said about integrity, the word that popped into my head was authenticity, given that what we were talking about. It's integrity, but it's also authenticity. What is authentically true? So people can communicate with authenticity and be at loggerheads. That's true. Yeah. But I do think that authenticity is a prerequisite for the emergence of a coherent and constructive collective experience. And I think that to me is what this chart is speaking to. It's the need for integrity and authenticity, and some things are ending, some things beginning. I do see it as quite a constructive new moon, though, even full moon, even though it's sort of like this crisis point. It's at the bendings of the nodes and it's revealing all this stuff. It's quite positive, I think. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why are we talking about that? Let me stop sharing the chat. I just checked because Mandi say check it as 9,000. Mandi, you want to guess number now? Guess a number.
Not up to 10, are we now? Oh gosh. Wow.
We have a 10th, apparently at this moment when we're recording on a Thursday morning, we have a 10,069
Wow.
signature. Thank you everyone for this lovely community. I think stand together, we can really do something really great. So, well, now, should we switch to Mercury then? Because I can't wait. Mercury in Cancer. So, this is not just a simple Mercury in Cancer, because this time, Mercury will stay in Cancer for nearly 2 months, isn't it? Around 2 months, because
Yeah.
there is a retrograde in between. So, who want to start?
Well, I think going back to what we've already talked about critical thinking, and critical thinking skewed by emotional reactions. So that certainly plays into that theme that we've already talked about. It's also about thinking about the past. We've already said it's quite a good Mercury for revision for students, or any kind of revision, any kind of information that we might need to go over again. And because there's so much, there seems to be the seeds of sown of the seeds have been sown. There's so much division in the world. It's worth us looking to the past to see how these things kind of ended up, to give us a perspective, again, talking about that perspective. Yeah, so emotional communication. We have what else? I've got a few notes, but I'll hand it over to yourself and Marcus for now, I think.
Sure. Yeah, Marcus.
Okay, just a few thoughts. I love that, Mandy, about the sort of like when Mercury goes into Cancer, obviously an emotional water sign ruled by the moon, so it can make the thinking more influenced by things like nostalgia, by one's personal feelings about things and all of that. So, and I think it's a really mixed bag, this one, because when it enters Cancer, for at least part of its time in Cancer, for the first month it's in Cancer, Jupiter's also present, which helps to, because the danger of Cancer is it can become quite parochial. You know what I mean? It can be just like my little clan, you know? So your
Mm-hmm.
thinking can be influenced by these are my feelings. This is what my family does. This is what this is how I always do things. And then with Jupiter there, it expands it out and goes, no, what about the world is the family? You know, how about how everybody else thinks? Look at all the ways these different cultures cook and live and think, you know, so that can really help. But then in the second month, Jupiter has bogged off into Leo, which is not bad. That we'll talk about that when it happens, I'm sure. But the difficult thing is that Saturn is in Aries, of course, and it's squaring Mercury for a lot of its time in Cancer. So I think this will be a thing of two parts. I think the first, well, right now, Mercury is applying to square Saturn, and that can bring in, on a personal level, bit of sort of sometimes depression, sometimes difficulties with communication. On a collective level, I think it can exacerbate that tendency to parochialism, to a bit of narrow-mindedness, to a bit of clannishness, to a bit of like fear-based thinking, which I would argue has been very prevalent in the world in recent years, leading to clannishness. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is mine, not yours. Go away. This isn't yours. You can't have it. It's mine. You know, and that it can be a bit like that. But then as it moves towards Jupiter, that sort of opens out a bit more. The conversation opens out into sort of like, how can we look after each other on a much wider scale rather than
Mm.
limiting ourselves by fear of things being destroyed or taken away, which I think is that square from Saturn in Aries. But then in the retrograde, Jupiter goes into Leo and Mercury starts moving back towards that Saturn. So the conversation somehow returns to things being limited or taken away. Anyway, I'm going to mute my mic because I've got builders in downstairs knocking things down and they're making a noise. So I thought
So beautiful. Thank you, Marcus. Yeah, Mandi.
Yeah, with Saturn, of course, Saturn and Mercury can be sensible conversations and serious conversations. Whereas with Mercury, with Jupiter, it can be opinions just being thrown out all over the place and sort of going overboard and over the top. Not trying to be negative here, but when we look at, if we often think of Jupiter, yes, it brings hope, it brings optimism, it brings growth, it brings that enthusiasm to, get things moving, to take the opportunity. But that opportunity can be wasted if we kind of take it too far, or we're more too messy with it. Going back to what I'm talking about with critical thinking, whereas Saturn, if we use Saturn properly, if we look after Saturn, then even in Aries, it can be assertive and it can be serious conversations where everyone involved can assert themselves in healthy ways, and that's probably asking a lot, particularly in public discourse. But in our own private lives and our own private discourse, and our own private communication and relationships, we can certainly bear that in mind and work towards having those hopeful, optimistic conversations and hopeful and optimistic thoughts as well. But at the same time, bringing wisdom. I think one of the things that Jupiter and Saturn have a lot in common is that they bring wisdom in different ways, very different ways, but they both bring wisdom. So there is the chance to sort of be wise here and to be empathetic and sympathetic as well. And then we have Mars in Taurus. I'm not sure how long Mars is going to be in Taurus, and that's, which is obviously the sign that rules that it's associated with Aries, and Saturn is in Aries, so we have to think about Mars and Mars in Taurus. I'm sure Marcus can talk more about Mars in Taurus and how it's not the best place for Mars. So that can lead to grudges. It can lead to clinging on to grudges, and I think Cancer can be about grudges as well. You've already talked about, this is my clan and we don't like these lot of people, we're not going to let it go, that kind of thing. So that's another thing to sort of think about with this. But there's, like anything in astrology, there's amazing potential in even the most difficult configuration. And I think we do have some choice, we do have some autonomy to make those sensible, to make those mature choices. And I think Cancer is about emotional maturity as well. That if a Cancer finds its place where it feels safe and secure and comfortable, then emotional security can follow. So think Mercury about what we might need Cancer to feel safe and secure, but without putting up those defenses so that you can't hear the conversation. This is what I believe, and I'm just not going to listen to anything else. I'm going to put myself in my own little cupboard of safety, where if anyone disagrees with me, I'm just going to block them. That's a thing these days, isn't it? We don't like what you're saying, we're going to block you. Block
Yes.
your number, block your WhatsApp, block your social media.
True. Yeah, thank you, Mandi. This is just really inspiring, isn't it? Marcus, do you want to add anything in?
Yes, I'm just a bit worried about the builders making lots of noise.
No, we couldn't hear anything.
Can't hear it.
No.
Can you not?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, it's very loud this end. Okay, so yeah, I totally agree about what you said, Mandi, about Jupiter and Saturn bringing wisdom, both of them in different ways. I love that. Because I actually ultimately think all of the planets ultimately are supposed to help us, all of them. I mean, that might be naive, but I also think it's the best framing of things. It's just that Saturn quite mathematically put is subtraction and Jupiter is addition. That's all it is. But we generally don't enjoy subtraction. We don't enjoy our bank accounts going down. We don't enjoy feeling limited. We don't enjoy compression. We don't. But afterwards, we're like, well, I'm kind of glad that all that dead wood was removed. Do you know what I mean? Which is a Saturnine function. So yeah, just I think I'm just going to reinforce that, and I really love what you say there, Mandy, about the Mercury Saturn square um, sometimes being about sort of the wisdom of restraint or the wisdom of experience. You know, it might seem like a negative thing. Um, I mean, I do skew more towards, in this case, Jupiter being a positive influence rather than
Mm,
excessive because of its exaltation in Cancer, skewing it a bit more positive, and Saturn,
hmm.
because of its fall in Aries, skewing a bit more negative, as you're saying, Mandy, about ruled by Mars in Taurus as well, which may tend to get very stuck on the negative. If it's peed off about something, it might just remain peed off about something, you know?
Can't
So
let it go.
yeah, exactly.
Dog with a bone.
But all of that being said, I'm a firm believer, as I think we all are, that any planetary placement and configuration can have a constructive manifestation. And, you know, on a world level, sure, things play out as they play out, but on an individual level, we can sort of like, so during this Mercury and Cancer time with the square to Saturn, it's sort of allowing difficult experiences or experiences of limitation to inform us, and not getting unduly upset if we feel that information is being limited or restricted, or we can get negative communications or something like that. Um, Instead, using it somewhere. I'm going to have to switch my mic off because
Okay.
that drilling is really loud.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So lovely. Thank you, Marcus' input. And then, I mean, this is so wonderful. I don't want today we all get very inspired. Maybe the Mercury square, Neptune keep floating in, we just like a continuous talking. But also I agree with Marcus that is like that kind of stuck in the negative mind. Somehow we need to remind ourselves, remind ourselves. And so should we move to the next important English, which is the Chiron moving to Taurus? This is also, just before next year's Chiron return. Just have a very quick word because I think we nearly run out of time, should we? Mandy, you have something else, something to say about the Chiron Taurus?
Yeah, so Chiron in Taurus, I think it's 20th of June, and it
Yes.
spends about 7 years. I think it does go back into Aries for a little while. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rod.
Yes.
You're more of the expert. You've done some great work already and some great talks already on Chiron in Taurus. And I'm sure you'll tell us where we can find those. But yeah, of course, we always think of Chiron as the wounded healer, but I think that's true, but it heals through suffering, really. If you want to
Yeah.
interpret that a little bit more usefully, it's about Chiron heals through suffering. And I think some of the themes of Chiron in Taurus are probably common to pretty much, if not all of us, which is issues around self-worth,
Mm,
issues around emotional and financial security. And also, we've already talked about this a little bit, the fear of loss, that attachment to things and that fear of loss. So there's the kind of those fears, whether they are founded or unfounded, they might be some things, I don't want to use the word issues, but I can't think of a better word really. But these are some things that we might, if it particularly if Chiron in Taurus touches our chart very strongly, whether it's making an aspect to personal planets or angles, for example, these are some of the things we might actually start to think about and might need to sort of work on. So again, self-worth. Who hasn't had issues with their own self-worth? Who hasn't feared rejection? There's also something, perhaps because it's Taurus, about how we feel about our bodies, our physical bodies, as well as the aesthetics of our physical bodies, because I think there's very few of us who don't have insecurity or haven't had insecurities or been working through insecurities about that. So these are some of the issues that might come up with Chiron in Taurus for us. So yeah, it's also perhaps about how do we, after Chiron in Aries, which is really full on energy, how do we regulate and calm our nervous system? And Taurus tells us that that's to do with, nature is a really good regulator of our emotions, emotional regulation. It's actually scientifically proven that going into green spaces, even if it's your park, and I've experienced that myself, when times when I felt very anxious, times when things have been difficult, I walk down one of the street near where I live that's full of shops and busy, and there's people everywhere, cars honking everywhere, and it's just, you're really, really busy. And then I turn left, and the second I turn left, I'm in the trees. That sort of feeling of peace and regulation comes over me, and the longer you spend in it, forest bathing. Forest bathing is a thing, isn't it? But you don't even need to do that. You don't need to go into forest in the middle of nowhere. You just go to your local park. That really, really helps, I think, just to relax our nervous system.
Yes, thank you, Mandi. I really love when you talk, and you really just bring that sense of Chiron in Taurus with the body, with value, and with our self-esteem. And it's not only looking on the healing side, but it's like a review what we've been wanting. But Marcus, do you want to add anything?
Don't have much to add here, because it's not a body that I use very much, really. Chiron, if ever, occasionally, occasionally. But I guess I was sort of just thinking about the vicarious healing bit of Chiron. The sort of the wound that we might have collectively, that we become good at spotting and healing in others. So in Taurus, I love those remedies, Mandi, that you were saying, particularly the nature stuff. That's really good. I was also just wondering about, so something along the lines of finances or real estate, or like you also mentioned bodies, and I was trying to think what might that look like when you've got sort of like an increase in vicarious healing of these things. It may be that sort of I mean, this is quite cynical. Activism is not always born out of vicarious healing, but there does seem to be a link between Chiron and activism to me. And that may be because it's the wound, a collective wound that we're trying to heal outside of ourselves, so to speak. So I wonder what that would look like in Taurus, because it has to do with the earth, with the body, with finances, potentially. It's the sign of Venus and the moon. So the fruits of the earth is really, really how I think about it. So I wonder if there'll be more activism about, because it's sort of gone quiet for a bit, about sort of GMOs and that sort of thing. I'm not sure.
That could be. That could be.
Anyway, just some random thoughts about that, because for
Thank
the
you.
next 7 years, and it's going to be squaring Pluto for the first few
Yeah.
years of it. So that'll be interesting. So it's definitely going to be affecting the sort of collective, I think, exposing some collective wounds around the earth and the body and all of that, and maybe more activism in those areas. I don't know.
Thank
Talking
you,
about
Marcus.
activism, that Chiron, of course, was of course the maverick. And again, that's another thing that's often not talked about with Chiron, that Chiron was the maverick. It was the civilized centaur, where the rest of the centaurs were very wild and instinctive and out of control, whereas that civilized Chiron centaur is very much about sort of doing things differently and doing things in a better way. When you were talking, Marcus, I came up with a couple of ideas about figures to do with Chiron in Taurus, and I came up with the ethical financial advisor.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I came up with the person who is physically different, has a physical impairment,
Yes.
who achieves perhaps in elite sport or personal training, or that makes us think actually none of us have perfect bodies, but we can still have that self-worth, and that's really, really valuable, that contributes something. And the other one I thought about in terms of the body and self-esteem, the person who enhances their physical appearance through having, I don't know, having cosmetic surgery, or through sort of,
Oh, I love that. You've got both sides of that, Mandy. You've got
yeah,
both the positive sort of avatar of that Chiron in Taurus, and also that vicariously sort of projected Chiron with those
yeah,
examples.
which you're talking about,
Brilliant.
the vicarious,
Yes, but I love,
that sort of
but they're
made me
both
think
both of.
about that.
I love the focus on the positive avatar, because we're going to get that too, aren't we? We're going to get
Yeah,
like people who
yeah,
are,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been reading, not reading, but seeing a lot. I don't really look at social media much, but there's been a lot of talk about looks maxing,
Ah, yes,
which
yes,
is
yeah.
a male, where male, whether they're doing, I don't know, looking more like how the
Clavicular, the guy who
image.
beats his face with hammers and takes methamphetamine to stay slim. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing. And all these things come from self-esteem, from self-worth, from
Mm,
fitting in, don't they? Sort of
Mm.
wanting to
definitely. Oh,
be,
yes.
you know, the alpha or the best or whatever. Mm.
Mm.
Wow. Wow, thank you both. I really, really enjoy this. Is I rarely say this, but every your talk is kind of full of soul. I was just like, oh my god, I want to write it down. Especially we mentioned about this, about the body, about the avatar of all this image, and who manifest. So before we finish, I want to echo this, because this is my first talk in back to 2009, when I give my first presentation in English about Chiron and social movement. So right after Chiron being discovered in 1977 in the United States, there's a huge manifestation called 4-5 sit-in. Sit-in, those people who have like a physical impediment on the wheelchair, because they are kind of worried about the regulation and the law change, and take their job opportunity away. So they have a huge protest, widespread in whole United States. And they occupied government building, and sit there, not going to go. So this is echoing what you say. And that was last time, 50 years ago, when Chiron just moved into Taurus.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
Fascinating, fascinating.
Yeah, I'm so happy to, every month I have a chance to, three of us just keep chatting about this, and couldn't stop. But I have to stop here, because I think Marcus have a lot of drilling going on. I think you need a little bit of rest. And thank you, Mandy. Gosh, that is fantastic. I really, really enjoy it. And then I have to go run to the learning my Spanish. My Spanish teacher is waiting for me now. So I'm going to stop here, and I want to invite everyone join the petition, and also join the AOA's video and webinar series. All right. So see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye, bye, bye.